It's delayed Paradox Rift tier list time. What's good? Welcome back to the channel. Normally I'll cover these videos before the set drops, but with Paradox Rift being such a shake-up set, I didn't feel like that was fitting. I felt that was just unfair and inaccurate. Paradox Rift has really shaken up the game. A lot of decks now have to decide whether they want to go first or second into a blind meta, as well as which matchups they want to go first or second. It's no longer a clear-cut choice. Thank Roaring Moon, Iron Hands, some Chen Pao stuff. They've really shaken up the game in a good way in my opinion. But today we've comprised a list of about 40-ish deck that we've been seeing in Japan and online tournaments. There's a lot here to look at, a lot here to cover. We're going to try to move fast. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to drop a comment below. If you don't like my tier list, let me know as well. I've also included the link to the tier list. You can send it to me on Twitter. If something appears in LAIC this weekend that's not on the tier list, don't worry. I have a plan to look back in about a month's time, update the tier list, and go from there. I feel like Paradox Rift is going to be an extended format, even with Paldean Fates recently revealed. I don't think it's going to shake up the game too much. With that said, let's cover the criteria of the tier list. S tier, best deck in the game, maybe best 2 decks in the game. They just absolutely beat down everything. If you've been playing for at least a year, remember Lugia from last year? That's kind of best deck in format. Tier 1, these are like your top 5, top 10 decks. They have really good spreads across the board. They can almost cleanly win you a game or a set as long as they get set up. They have very good answers to just about everything, and these are the decks I'd comfortably recommend if you were picking up a deck when you weren't sure what to play. Tier 1.5, meta's got to go a certain way. If they're seeing the matchups they want to see in a high amount because Tier 1 is going that way, then you definitely want to play these. These are Tier 1.5 close to 1. If they're missing everything, remember the days of Arceus Duraludon where the decks you want to see are no longer being played. You're more like a tier 2. Tier 2, they have clear flaws, absolute problem. They are either inconsistent, or they don't hit hard enough, or they're not seeing what they need. Like the game has shifted away from them, or they've just been power crept and they're just too weak to keep up. Those are the tier 2s, but they're not dead yet. They can sneak in, they can win an event. Again, you got to run the gauntlet, you got to run the intangibles and see what happens. So you just play your games of Pokemon. If you like this deck and it's in tier 2, don't write it off, because people have won entire tournaments with decks that would be classified as tier 2. Tier 3, these ones are fringe. They're basically hanging on to the tier list. I've included them mostly to give you an idea of what's more or less for fun, what's extremely flawed, and what needs either a lot of help or you might have to just put them down. Tier 3 is just kind of the United Wings. Didn't even make the tier list today, but that deck was so bad that I just kept putting it on tier 3 to show you what a bad deck looked like. So let's jump right through tier 3 right quick and show you what a bad deck looks like. First one, Venonat's Bite Off. So basically item lock, that's all it's trying to do, and slowly lock them with retreat. I think if you're going to retreat lock and just really pick away at an opponent, there's better decks in the format. And it doesn't hit hard enough. And because you can't apply it the first turn of the game, by the time that you get to apply it, they're pretty much ahead of you at that point, and they've used the item cards they want. The game has gotten a lot faster. Cloth, Electrode, we're not going to talk too long. He hits Fighting and Grass, but there's a lot of convoluted ways to do this. A double turbo, you need to inflict status conditions. Electrode, same thing, you need to inflict multiple status conditions. This is a fun laddery deck that I definitely would like to cover just to kind of show you what's what, but I don't put it any higher than tier 3. You'll have fun with it, but it's not competitive. Dialga, this is one of those ones I keep bringing just to keep beating on again and again. So relying on a stage 1 that needs 5 energy and a stage 2 that blindly looks at energies, and if you've seen somebody whiff on an electricity generator, imagine whiffing on it off of stage 2. Feels really bad. It needs either a revamp, it needs another tool, it needs something, it needs the game to slow down greatly, but Dialga is just really bad. Okay, Regidrago. I don't know what it's missing. You can cheese some games, like Path Shenanigans, whatnot. It did win, I think it was like Juniors at Worlds or NAIC or something, but it just has so many problems going for it. The game got so much faster, and this deck was not fast to begin with, so if you miss a beat, you're out. Even with Earthen Vessel, you're out with Regidrago. And Mewtwo and Mew GX was such a good card, but I think this being a stage 1 trying to do those shenanigans and the dragon tools being very limited, I don't like where it's positioned at the moment. All right, another bad one. Garchomp. Okay, I've been trying to refine this. I haven't come across anything. Right now, it is bad. Keep an eye on it, though. It's one of those cards that can get better over time because it is one of the Pokemon company's like go-to Pokemon. So I imagine we might see something later to help this. And I could be proven wrong and somebody pops out a list that just cracks it, but right now Garchomp doesn't matter the variant, it's just bad. Miraidon Regieleki. This one is a shame considering we are getting an Aleki Miraidon League Battle deck. I think when rotation hits, Aleki gets better, but right now there's a few Pokemon that can instant KO your 3-prizer, and being 2 attacks away from winning, and they can apply pressure as early as turn 1, that there's probably a better way out there to play Miraidon. We're just trying to rapid fire through the bad ones. All right, Iron Valley and Jolteon. Okay, cool. So I've watched enough people try to pitch Valiant's the end of the world, blah, blah, blah. You know what? If you break their board in that first turn and you hit them with the Yogg Loop and then break their board before you hand it back, then yeah, Valiant and Jolteon is good. But a lot of the times, you'll Valiant, you'll get your Yogg Loop, you'll put some more damage, maybe get an attack, and you'll take 2 or 3 prizes, then the deck fizzles out because it's like the what's next. And putting up a 3-prizer that only has 300 hit points, that's a very easy work through. And Valiant is already very like high rolly, you need certain things to go. I think there'll be better ways to play Valiant, so tier 3, like you'll have fun with it. If you love Jolteon, this is probably the way you'll get it out there. But God, one here. Oh, we got 2 more. DTE Mew. So the format again has sped up. Hitting 220 or 230 is an extremely relevant number. And there are Pokemon now that sit at 290 as 2-prizers. So Mew just is stuck at a damage cap hell. Judge Path, yes, that's good. But there's a few more dark Pokemon. Even with Drapion at an all-time low, Mew is just so poorly positioned. And there's another variant here that I think if you're gonna play Mew and you're not gonna let it die, Double Turbo is not the way. Like, yes, you can bring the game to a crawl, but the game has gotten so much faster. Good friggin' luck. If you can prove me wrong, Mew being tier 3, I would love to see it. I'm not completely writing it off, but I'm telling you, you're playing the game on hard mode, and there is no need. All right, Arceus Duraludon. This one hurt, absolutely hurt. This was one of my favorite decks to play from Scarlet and Violet base all the way up through the 151 format. Was it slowly losing its legs? Certainly. But with the deck shifting more towards a basic energy focus, Skyscraper just doesn't cover it. Trinity Nova only doing 180 or 200, again, isn't covering it. I didn't put many Arceus variants at all really on here, maybe like 1 or 2, because I think Arceus is slowly getting power crept out of the game. Do I think it's dead? No. It's just what we're seeing currently based on the first 2 weeks, whether people are playing with the new toys or whatever. I'm just not seeing enough of it to like. Speaking of Arceus Goodra, so you can play it with Vulpix, you can play whatever, but only hitting 200, only hitting 180, only hitting, what, 160 on that Vulpix. There's not a lot to like there, again, because Starbirth can grab everything, but then it's like, what's next? Same thing comes back to the Jolteon. It's like, you can start strong, you can do what you want, you get your game plan off, and then you fizzle. And then you're just kind of like, oh, well, I hope my opponent doesn't have it. And if you're playing that kind of game, you really should be playing something that hits a little harder. So that is our tier 3. Those are what are definitions of flawed or bad decks that just, there's so many better options. They're just hanging out there to show you what a bad one looks like. So that's tier 3 out of the way. Let's jump into tier 2 and show you what a tier 2 deck looks like. Regigigas. Gigas moves from 3 to 2 with the inclusions of Earthen Vessel to grab your basic energy so you can easily discard them, dump them in the pile so you can Ancient Wisdom, and getting Counter Catcher. So being able to boss up something specifically weak to the Regi that you want to use with an item card, meaning you can still play your supporter for turn and not be locked into boss, or still be able to play like cheeky things. I've seen some Thornton Amp You Very Much plays, which are hilarious. I think Gigas is now a functional flawed 2-pile. Zoroark. This is the first format in the 2 years it's been legal. The inclusion of Jirachi means it patches up the Lost Box matchup. You still are very, very bad into Amp You Very Much or anything that can derail your setup early. I've seen Avery come back. I've seen Chien-Pao with the Clones. I've seen Shurikens with the Clones. Lost Box has been like a step back, so I do like it. It did very well late night. If you want to see that list covered on the channel, let me know. It's now a functional 60. It's a flawed 60, but it is functional. I am going to put Goldingo. This is all the other variants, whether it's Basculegion, whether it's Gallade, whether it's something I'm not thinking of. This is where I'm putting it tier 2. Probably got some issues until Path of the Peak rotates. Make It Rain or Coin Bonus. They're not as good as they should be. The card itself is designed phenomenally. I just think where the game is with the extended card pool, it struggles. So we need a rotation, we need a little help, we need maybe something that's more weak to metal aside from Chien-Pao. So it's tier 2, it's flawed though. It is flawed. You're going to win games, but you're also going to scratch your head or lose your mind going, oh my god, this could have been so much better. Another tier 2 is Lost Box Goodra. So I like this one here because you have the Zam to hit 220 on a 1-prizer. You have Goodra to do 200. Thornton is an underplayed card, which I think you should be considering if you're going to play Goodra. Having Goodra V on the board when you don't need it is awful. Lost Mine is also very good. Having access to Counter Catcher, having access to Roxanne, like you're still relying on the backbone of the Lost Zone engine, but Goodra is more defensive than offensive, and this is probably the most aggressive format of the year. The Goodra he's stuck in the middle, in the pack. Iron Valley and Xatu. Again, you're still trying to break off their board before they can really do anything, And Xatu keeps you from fizzling a little more, so like you can set up an attacker in the back if it's Cophagrigus, if it's Iron Valiant itself, if it's one prize army like Snorlaxus or something. You do have some more options. It gives me the old school days of Malamar, but Malamar again was a tier 2 deck in my opinion. So at least being able to draw 2 cards and an Accelerate Energy is good. It just doesn't have that piece that makes it feel like an unfair deck. It feels like a fair deck, and especially into these decks, it's not even a clear cut like ahead of the rest. Zoroark V-Star. So it's Zoroark V-Star for 2 energy. Capped out bench, no mods, does 280. That's the double turbo, so that's pretty good. The game is shifted back to a 2-2-2 kind of meta, so Zoroark doesn't mind creeping into that. You just have to be very careful and hope they don't take that first 2 prizes before you. You're a racing deck, you're an evolving racing deck, so you're at a slight disadvantage to those basic racing decks, but if you can put enough of the 1 prize army out there, Clef Keys are also a nice way to get that set up, whether you're using Turbocharge, or you're using the TM Evolution, or you're just straight up just throwing them in the way. Clef Key with Zoroark is very strong. I think it's, again, a playable 60, but it does have some bad matchups. It has some good ones. If you steamroll them and race a little faster, you can see a few of them. This would be one I'd expect to see people maybe creep into day 2 at LASIC or a regional this season with, and that's why I'm like, okay, if you love Zoroark, this is the format for you, because you like going fast and you like hitting hard. You just don't want to be hit harder than you hit them. Palkia. This card is still well designed. Star Portal is cracked, being able to grab 3 energy out of the discard pile, attack for 260. However you want to finish out the kit is up to you, whether you want to go with Valiants, whether you want to go with Clef Keys, whether you want to go with Chempows, whether you want to go with the Rocks. Palkia has a lot of potential. It's how you fill out the rest of the deck. You also have access to Melanie, so on. I imagine that we will see Palkia pop up from time to time. It's a card that's worth experimenting with, and it's not quite dead. So Subspace Well for 2 energy, and then you don't mind the KO, as long as you have a way to respond back. So amp you very much with the tool. The Future Booster capsule does get the 1-hit KO and take 3 prizes on this, but I have yet to see a Iron Hands deck include the capsule yet. So, you know what, you're still pretty much safe for now. Rapid Strike, Urshifu, and Teleon. So I'm putting this one tier 2. Right now, Double Gunner does pick apart like smaller boards like your Comfeys, your Gardevoirs, your Charmanders. You can deal with a lot of those. But between 140 and 150, you're not hitting hard enough for those basic decks. Some of them can take instant KOs on you. Inteleon right now is a little flawed. I mean, I've seen a few lists in Japan running Inteleon and Frostlass, which is interesting, or Urshifu with another partner. The deck seems like they're destined for a breakup, but if you play the deck, you've clearly picked your spot and you're trying to capitalize on it. Lugia Tyranitar. I feel like your damage caps are a little awkward and being locked into a couple attackers. The single strike thing of bricking does feel more common with this because you need the urns, you need the energy, you need your attackers, you need the Ultra Balls, you need the discard. It hasn't necessarily incorporated Earthen Vessel in yet. I mean, that could be worth it. It may be for a fighting in a dark to just kind of smooth things over. This feels like the single strike brick that just kind of goes. Lugia is still good. Lugia is probably the top dog that I've talked in tier 2 right now. Pidgeot, Charizard. So I've seen a few builds come around, which is why they're on the list. I just think Pidgeot right now is a liability. It's very difficult to set up one stage 2, let alone multiple, and if that one is only providing 1 card per turn, I'm in the camp of Babarrel as a better draw for this format than Pidgeot, because you just want to see a larger volume of cards. Decks will turn through 7 to 12 to 15 cards in a turn, and Pidgeot only fine-tuning 1, which in most formats would be very, very good, is just a bit problematic. This one hurts, but we are going to put Lost Box Charizard there. This one is a guilty pleasure deck, and I think it's very good. I'm just not going to lie to you and say that it's like a 1.5 or a 1. It's just the game has gotten really fast. Like, unless you start incorporating Radiant Zard, and then you lose your consistency because Greninja just draws cards. It can win. I'm going to put them higher up. Like, of the decks in the tier 2, I'm going to put the Charizards up there because Burning Darkness, hitting for 180 through 330, is very strong. It's just a matter of getting the pieces online, and there's a better build clearly still lurking down there that I think, if you're going to play Charizard, you probably want to play a more competitive build. One more in the tier 2. Urshifu, Iron Valiant. So this one here, same thing. Because Urshifu only hits 150 and 120, it has the flaws of a damage cap issue. So Valiant, again, tries to pick apart their board, set you up for the Yoga Loop. You build your own board, and then you G-Max Rapid Flow. Play it with Melanie. For the love of God, please play it with Melanie. What do? Like, if you don't win on the spot, your opponent is going to show you some disgusting things and break your deck apart, because all you have is switch cards and what's left over from that reckless start. So tier 2, but G-Max Rapid Flow is so strong. So it is much better than this thing because it is not 300, it is 330, which is still a tall ask for a lot of decks to hit. Tier 2 in a nutshell. Actually, no, you know what? I'm going to bump Lost Box Kyogre in there. A lot more mana fee. You got to work through some more hoops. And if decks start playing Jirachi, you are just in the middle. Okay, that's the tier 2. Let's take a look at tier 1.5. This is, again, the one where it just needs the room to go a certain way. So this is all, these are all dependent on, oh, forgot a tier 2. So Lost Box, Roaring Moon. There's better ways to play Roaring Moon and better ways to play Lost Box, but it is not bad. Tier 1.5. Turbo Lost Box. If they're not playing Jirachi, I think this deck literally didn't lose anything. You gained Counter Catcher. This is Lost Box plus Greninja plus stuff. Moonlight Shuriken, drawing cards. The Lost Box engine is very, very good. There's a lot to like here. I think it is very strong, and whatever you choose to partner with, as long as you expect the Jirachi, I think you'll do fine. Iron Valley and Entei. I'm seeing it pick up steam. I haven't had a chance to test it, but it does look strong on paper. You have the one prizer to put them back on the odd trade. You have the Valiant for the Tachyon bits. Again, Yoga Loop. But the difference between other Valiant lists we've talked about is this one doesn't look like it fizzles. Entei hits for 220 if full benches. Most decks want to go wide, so hitting 220 and the Tachyon bits bringing them up. And if you miss a KO, you can Tachyon bits, set yourself up for a mid-game Yoga Loop, and then smash them again, Burning Rondo. How well that's going to perform, we shall see. Roaring Moon. There's 2 Roaring Moon builds, just to talk about them right quick. Roaring Moon, and I'm going to call this one Blue Moon. The difference is one plays water energy, E-switches, and etc. This one does not, and it is mostly focused on the dark package. So you have your Morpekos, you have the Roaring Moon, you have maybe a Darkrai. I think this one is more limited, so I don't like it as much. There will come a list where people just start winning with it, maybe. But right now, I like the blue guy because he has Moonlight Shuriken. Spoiler, there's our first tier 1. I'm putting Goldingo, again, refined list. There are better deck builders out there than myself, and what I'm seeing, if you have a good Goldingo list, you're going to hold it, right? Like LAIC is coming, you're going to hold it. And I feel like Scizor being able to force them onto an odd prize trade, Make It Rain being able to take the Oko. As long as you're good at your prize mapping, you get a decent draw and just go from there. I think Goldingo has all of the makings of a good card. It just needs to see certain things. It doesn't like seeing a lot of one prize decks. It doesn't like seeing a lot of Charizard, or Gardevoir, but it does like seeing like the rest of the field, and I think if you get the right matchup roulette, then you can live on that, because a lot of decks play abilities, so Scizor pulls its weight very quickly. Alright, Chien-Pao backs Excalibur, no Iron Hands. So again, it's pretty much the unchanged deck from the previous format. Deck was already good. I think it's half a step below its newest variant, because sometimes Iron Hands just cleans up your Lost Box matchup. And that's, again, another spoiler, is that's the big one. So this is still a good deck. It's more consistent, but that cleans up a matchup you once struggled with on paper, and being able to clean that up and patch up the work, because if they get the Iron Hands and your opponent can't respond on it, you've taken 2. If they can't respond, you've taken 4. And then by the time they deal with it, you just Chien-Pao, clean up the rest. This one here still has to figure out how are we dealing with our one prize decks. So 1.5 is good. If there's not a lot of one prize decks, it's like a 1. If there's a little more one prize-y stuff in the format, or you run into some stuff that you don't want to see, then this one's kind of stuck right in the middle. That mostly rounds out our tier 1.5. So now we are looking at the end of it in tier 1. So we're going to quickly rattle through the, Block Locks, tier 1.5. Good players know how to play around this. Players, if you're going to respect it, respect it. Mostly it's just managing your resources, assessing your win con, and being patient. So don't rush into anything unless it's a moment of position that they can't punish you for. But Block Locks, just throwing something in the active and making sure they can't move it, is very strong. Now we're in the tier 1. So there is no S tier decks today. Radiant Charizard, Lost Box. It has Cramorants, it has Sableye, and it has a 250 Beat Stick and Combustion Blast that you can recycle with Claras or Super Rods or Thorntons, but being able to respond on a Roaring Moon or respond on an Iron Hands is very strong, even Chien-Pao, and then you have your Sableye and Cramorants to deal with everything else and slowly work your numbers down. And until I see Jirachi being played in a high enough drove, I don't think this deck where it loses anything. It might actually be one of the best Lost Boxers. Gardevoir, this is arguably top 3 deck I would recommend. It is so close to S tier that it is very good. It has Counter Catcher, it has Iono in the same turn, it has the Shining Arcana, it has Reversal Energy. This deck is the embodiment of the comeback mechanic in one deck. Gardevoir is always a beloved deck and it has a lot of answers. Right now it is at the peak of its power, but it's not quite S. Alright, my second pick in my top 3 would be Giratina. So this is a 50-50 deck. It doesn't beat down anything in particular. It just walks into the room and says, you know what, I like my chances. You have Path, you have Abyss Seeking, you have Sableye, you have the Counter Catcher, you have the Roxanne late. I've been experimenting with other options, and I just think that 280 and an insta-KO on a 280 body is very good. Plus, if Roaring Moon starts doing frenzy gouging on your V stars, then you can easily clean up with Sableye. Giratina doesn't mind. It's just a matter of how you play the catch up. You build some miraculous catch ups with this deck. Number 3 on my recommended would be colorless Lugias. Would be Lugia, because you get the Vessel, you get Fire, a Lightning, and a Water. So you get to do your best Aurora box impression. So now you have Lumineon in the deck, now you have Iron Hands in the deck, now you have Radiant Zard mid-game in the deck or earlier than the 2 prize turn. Lugia is a very strong pick. Anybody saying that Lugia is dead is so wrong. Until we start seeing Iron Hands decks put in that booster capsule, I think Lugia is fine. Fight through the consistency battle, and it's up there and it's going because it likes pretty much everything here. Because if they can't answer your Iron Hands, then you've taken 4 prizes. Charizard. This would be my number 4. Charizard Barrel, so you're playing Charmander, 3 Charmeleons, you're playing the Charizard, and then you're playing like Turo. Like I've seen a lot of it. The TM, you slow evolve, and that way when you use Turo, you can pick up your Charizards, denying damage, and then just keep going that way. And if they do take KOs, then you get stronger. So the new Charizard is one that I don't think is overhyped. I think it's just where it should be. But if you go first, awesome. You get to set up your board, and you have a couple rare candies to cheat them out. If you go second, then you have TM Evolution to evolve up to your Charmeleons. And the 100 hit point Charmeleon is huge because Moonlight Shuriken can't get it anymore. You don't have to worry about benching both Manaphy and Jirachi. You can pick and choose which one you think you need, and then go off that, which is even better. And then once they hit the Terras, you don't have to worry about Manaphy anymore. It does make some matchups a little interesting. Confidently, I'd say this is the order that I would probably place them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Any of those decks can't go wrong. Hell, Genpao, top 6 right there, like fantastic. Mew, metagame is switchback. A 2 prize format again, so 2, 2, 2. Melodious Echo, Elisa Sparkle, turn 1, bop, play some Pokemon catchers or counter catcher or anything like that, and you can go. Mew is back at the top table, and there's no Drapion or Spiritomb really to be seen. It can also play Path to the Peak. You just have to figure out which deck you're going to race, how you're going to go. Mew is just consistent. You just draw a shit ton of cards. And of course, the last one, Miraidon. So this one is Miraidon Path Flaffy. You have Iron Hands, you don't have to really change your deck much. You have Path, JW Krewall literally just won Toronto Regionals with it. I don't think it lost anything. I think it gained stuff. That would be my tier list. I just think Miraidon is one of those sneaky picks. Like I have 2 builds of Miraidon going right now, testing with Path, testing without Path. And I think it's whatever decks that really take advantage of Path can deal with this entire top line, so you don't mind. You do have to worry about the Charizards, but don't worry about it. You have your generators, you have your Paths, you have your tandem units, just draw a bunch of cards, set up, hit for 220 every turn. So that's the tier list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then you can fight it out amongst tier 1.5 who would be the 10. So there's, look at that, 2 videos in 1. We have my top 10 decks I'd recommend playing and my tier list for the early Paradox Rift format. So if you enjoyed the video, let me know down below. And until next time, guys, take care.